The clash of steel had ended hours ago, but the screams still echoed in Addison's head. Smoke hung heavy over the battlefield, rising from the broken machines and scorched earth. His squad had been scattered, his rifle torn from his hands, and his body bruised from the fight. The aliens did not kill him on the field. They wanted something far worse. 2 towering guards dragged him through the golden gates of a palace so massive it seemed carved from the bones of mountains. The halls stretched endlessly, filled with flickering flames, banners of blood-red silk, and alien nobles with jeweled masks staring down at him like hunters watching prey. At the far end sat the king. His body was covered in thick, plated armor that glimmered black and silver under the light. His crown curved like horns, his eyes burning a deep shade of violet. This was King Vorith, ruler of the Carid Dominion, sworn enemy of Earth. His voice thundered through the chamber as he spoke. "Another human soldier," the king said, his tone cold. "Let him die here, before my court, so that all may know the fate of Earth's warriors." The nobles cheered. Their laughter cut into Addison like blades. They shouted for blood, for his head to roll, for his body to be left as food for the war beasts that waited outside the walls. Addison clenched his jaw, refusing to bow. If he was going to die, he would die standing. He looked the king in the eye and spat on the floor, his last act of defiance. The king rose, lifting one clawed hand. The executioner stepped forward, carrying a blade as tall as Addison himself. The crowd's roar grew louder, drowning out everything else. But then, the chamber fell silent. A voice rang out, smooth and sharp, like music slicing through stone. "This one is mine, father." All eyes turned to the source. From behind the throne, stepping into the light, came Princess Elira. Her gown shimmered like starlight, silver threads woven with deep blue fabric that clung to her graceful form. Her hair, long and dark with a hint of emerald shine, framed her striking face. Her eyes glowed softly, the same violet as her father's, but there was something else in them, something human could understand. Defiance. The court gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. A princess had spoken. King Vorith's gaze narrowed. "Elira," he said slowly, "do you know what you are saying?" She walked down the steps, her voice calm but unyielding. "According to the ancient law of the Dominion, a royal princess may claim one warrior. His life is bound to her will. No blade can touch him, unless she commands it." The executioner froze. The nobles murmured, scandalized. The king's jaw tightened. "You would claim a human soldier?" he asked, his tone like thunder before a storm. "Yes," she answered, without hesitation. "This one is mine." The court erupted in chaos. Some shouted in outrage, others laughed in disbelief. A princess binding herself to a human was unheard of, a disgrace, a madness. Yet the law was clear. Even the king himself could not undo it without igniting rebellion among the old families who guarded tradition. Vorith's voice dropped to a low growl. "Very well, daughter. Take him. But remember this, every choice has a cost. You will regret this one." Addison stared at her in shock, his heart pounding. He had no idea why she had saved him, no idea what trap he had just fallen into. All he knew was that his execution was halted, and his fate now lay in the hands of an alien princess whose motives were a mystery. The guards released their grip on him, shoving him forward until he stood only a few steps from her. She looked at him briefly, her expression unreadable, then turned away. "Come," she said softly, but firmly enough that no one dared question. The palace doors opened. The crowd watched in silence as the human soldier followed the alien princess into the shadows of the corridor, his life spared but his freedom lost. And though he did not know it yet, this moment was the beginning of a chain of events that would decide the fate of not just his life, but both their worlds. The corridors of the palace were dim and endless, lit by floating crystals that pulsed with blue light. Addison's steps echoed against the marble floor as he followed the princess. His wrists were still bound in iron cuffs, his body aching from battle, but the greater weight pressing on him was confusion. Why had she stopped his death? Why would a princess, surrounded by her people and her father's power, claim a human soldier as her own? When they reached her chambers, the guards stood back, bowing slightly. None dared to speak against her command, but their eyes burned with suspicion. The tall doors closed behind them, sealing Addison and Elira in a chamber far larger than any human hall. The walls glimmered with etched silver patterns that seemed alive, curling into strange symbols. A bed draped in silk rested near the balcony, and at the center was a fire pit glowing faintly with blue flames. Elira turned toward him at last. Her voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that matched her father's throne. "Remove his chains." The guards hesitated. She raised an eyebrow. They obeyed at once, unlocking the cuffs and stepping away. Addison rubbed his sore wrists, glaring at her. "Why?" His voice was hoarse from smoke and thirst. "Why did you do that? Why not let me die?" Her violet eyes studied him for a moment before she spoke. "Because if you died, your people would lose hope. And if Earth loses hope, my father will win." Addison frowned. "You are telling me you saved me for politics? Not mercy." Her lips curved slightly, but it was not a smile. "Mercy has no place in my father's court. Survival does. Listen carefully, human. My father plans to invade Earth. He believes your armies are weak, scattered, broken. He will crush your cities and enslave your people." Addison's hands clenched into fists. "And you are part of his empire. You are his daughter. Why should I believe a word you say?" "Because," she said, lowering her voice, "I do not want that war. I have seen too many worlds burn for his pride. And now, I have taken you as mine. It is the only way I could slow his hand." Addison shook his head, anger boiling in his chest. "So, I am just a pawn in your game. A tool." She did not deny it. "Perhaps. But understand this. By claiming you, I placed my life in danger as well. The court sees you as filth. To them, I disgraced myself. Do you think they will forgive me easily?" Already whispers of betrayal circle through the palace. Her words sank into him slowly. He wanted to hate her, to shout that she was just another alien manipulating human lives. But something in her voice, steady yet strained, hinted at risk far greater than he first believed. That night, she explained the ancient law. When a princess claimed a warrior, the bond was more than symbolic. It meant she had chosen a protector, a consort, a partner bound to her will. No king could overrule it without shattering the dominion's sacred traditions. The law had been written long before her father's reign, forged in the age when nobles ruled through bloodlines and sacred oaths. By binding herself to a human, she had created a knot her father could not easily untangle. The next day, a ritual was performed in the grand hall. Addison stood beside her, dressed in ceremonial armor far too ornate for his liking. His wrists and chest still bore scars from battle, yet the alien court watched him with scorn, whispering behind jeweled masks. Elira spoke the words of binding in her native tongue, her voice clear as crystal. The priest raised his staff, striking the ground 3 times. The bond was sealed. To the world outside, it looked like a marriage, a claim of ownership. To the court, it was scandal. To Addison, it was a cage. When the ceremony ended, Addison leaned closer, his voice low so only she could hear. "You made me your prisoner." Elira's eyes met his. "No, I made you my shield. And perhaps you will become more than that." In the days that followed, Elira taught him the customs of the palace. She warned him never to speak directly to certain nobles, never to insult the sacred banners, never to touch the glowing stones that powered the palace walls. At first, Addison refused her lessons, his pride burning. But when he saw the way alien servants bowed to her and glared at him, when he overheard nobles calling for his quiet death, he began to realize she was not exaggerating. His survival depended on her guidance. And as much as he hated to admit it, she was risking everything to keep him alive. Late one night, as the twin moons hung above the palace, Addison stood by the balcony, staring out over the alien city. Towers of black stone rose into the sky, their tips glowing faintly with blue fire. He thought of Earth, of the friends he had lost on the battlefield, of the family he might never see again. "You are far from home," Elira said behind him. He did not turn. "And trapped in yours." Her footsteps were soft as she joined him. "Trapped is not the word I would use. You are caught between worlds, yes. But perhaps you will find that in between, there is power." Addison glanced at her, surprised by the weariness in her eyes. She was not the untouchable royal he imagined. She was a woman balancing on a blade's edge, defying her father's wrath while pretending loyalty. For the first time, Addison felt something other than anger toward her. He felt curiosity, and deep within, a spark of reluctant respect. But fate was not finished with them. In the shadows of the palace, enemies stirred. And soon, both Elira and Addison would discover just how dangerous their bond had made them. The palace was never truly silent. At night, the halls breathed with strange sounds. Low hums from the glowing crystals, the distant clang of armored guards marching their endless routes, and whispers that seemed to crawl along the stone walls themselves. Addison had learned to stay alert even while resting. He was a soldier, and his instincts had been carved into him by war. That night, those instincts saved him. The fire pit in Elira's chamber had burned low, casting faint blue light across the silken curtains. Addison lay on the floor near the balcony, his back against the wall. He was half asleep when he felt it, a shift in the air, a vibration too soft for ordinary ears. His eyes opened at once. A shadow slipped past the curtains. Another crouched by the balcony railing. Their movements were smooth, practiced, silent. Assassins. Addison did not think. He moved. The first assassin lunged, blade flashing. Addison rolled aside, the weapon slicing the floor where he had been. He grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisting hard, forcing the alien to drop the blade. A second figure leapt toward him, striking with a curved dagger. Addison blocked with the first assassin's arm, then drove his elbow into the creature's throat. The chamber filled with muffled grunts, the clash of steel, and the rip of fabric. Addison fought like the soldier he was, each strike fueled by raw survival. But these were no common soldiers. Their skin was marked with dark ink, their eyes hidden behind masks. They were trained killers of the Dominion, sworn to silence their prey. One slipped past him and rushed toward the bed. Elira sat upright, eyes wide but calm. She did not scream. Instead, she reached for the dagger hidden beneath her pillow and slashed at the assassin, forcing him back. Addison's chest tightened. They were not here only for him. They wanted her too. With a roar, he tackled the closest assassin, wrestling for the blade. Blood smeared across his knuckles as he struck again and again until the alien collapsed. The second assassin darted for the balcony, but Elira's dagger flew through the air, piercing his shoulder. He stumbled, cursed in their tongue, and fled into the night. The chamber fell still. Addison stood in the center, chest heaving, blood dripping from his knuckles. Two bodies lay at his feet, their black cloaks pooling like shadows on the floor. His gaze shifted to Elira, who sat with the dagger still in her hand, her breath steady despite the danger that had just passed. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Addison broke the silence. They were not only after me. Elira lowered the blade slowly. No, they were sent to punish me for what I did. My father's court is filled with those who would rather see me dead than bound to you. Addison stared at her, the truth sinking deeper. You risked everything. You are not pretending. You really are standing against him. Her eyes met his, sharp and unflinching. I told you, saving you was not mercy. It was a choice. And choices carry consequences. Tonight, you saw them with your own eyes. Addison sat down heavily against the wall, wiping the blood from his hands. He thought back to the battlefield, to the friends who had fallen, to the hopeless fight against a force far stronger than Earth could endure. He had believed she was only using him as a shield. But now, seeing her dagger drawn, seeing her face lit by moonlight and defiance, he realized something had changed. She was not his captor. She was his ally. And maybe, just maybe, she was the only reason he was still alive. Elira rose from the bed, stepping closer to him. She crouched, her hand hovering as if to touch his shoulder, but she stopped short. You fought well, Addison. You fought like one of us. But you must understand, this was only the beginning. My father's patience grows thin. Soon, he will test you in ways far crueler than assassins. Addison looked up at her. For the first time, he did not see her as the alien princess who claimed him. He saw her as a woman standing on the same battlefield he was, surrounded by enemies, forced to make impossible choices. He nodded slowly. Then I will fight. Not because I owe you. Not because I want to serve your throne. But because I will not let them kill me, or you. Her eyes softened, just for a heartbeat, before her mask of calm returned. Then we will stand together. Whatever comes. Outside, the moon sank lower, casting long shadows across the alien city. And in those shadows, new schemes were already unfolding. The king would not forgive defiance. He would not forget the shame his daughter had brought before his court. And soon, Addison and Elira would learn what it truly meant to challenge a king who ruled through fear. The palace buzzed with whispers after the attack. The bodies of the assassins had vanished before dawn, taken by silent hands. No one admitted to sending them, yet everyone knew the truth. Assassins did not walk freely into the princess's chamber without approval from the highest levels. Addison sharpened his blade quietly in the days that followed, though it was more a ritual than preparation. He had no illusions. A single sword meant little in the heart of an alien empire, but the rhythm of steel against stone calmed him, reminding him of the soldier he once was. Elira moved through the palace with her head high, never showing weakness. Yet Addison noticed the way her hand lingered near hidden daggers, the way her gaze flicked toward every shadow. She had lived with danger her entire life, but now it walked closer than ever. Then came the invitation. The king announced a grand feast, a celebration of victory over the humans who had dared resist his dominion. Nobles from across the empire gathered in the great hall, their jeweled masks gleaming, their laughter sharp as knives. Long tables groaned beneath platters of roasted beasts, fruits that shimmered like gems, and golden cups filled with bitter black wine. At the head of the hall, upon a throne of obsidian, sat King Vorith. His armor gleamed, his crown catching the firelight. His eyes burned brighter than the torches. When Addison entered at Elira's side, the hall fell silent for a moment. Every gaze turned toward him, measuring, mocking. A human at the princess's side was an insult carved into their tradition, yet none could speak against the law that bound him to her. The king's voice boomed. "Welcome, daughter. Welcome, human. Sit, and join us in victory." Addison's jaw tightened, but he followed Elira to the high table. Food was set before him, though he recognized little of it. The nobles watched as he ate, whispering, sneering, their eyes hungry for his shame. At first, the feast was all ceremony, songs of conquest, boasts of battles, toasts to the dominion's glory. Addison endured it in silence, his gaze steady, his back unbending. He would not give them the pleasure of seeing weakness. Then the king rose. His voice silenced the hall in an instant. "Tonight, we celebrate our triumphs," Vorith said, lifting a cup of black wine. "But victory is more than banners and feasts. Victory is loyalty. It is proving that even the conquered can learn their place." He gestured with one hand. The doors of the hall opened. Guards dragged in a man, broken and bleeding. A human soldier. Addison's breath caught. The prisoner stumbled forward, chains rattling. His face was bruised, his uniform torn, but his eyes burned with defiance, the same fire Addison had once carried on the battlefield. The king smiled, and the hall grew colder. "Addison, you stand here as my daughter's chosen. But loyalty is not spoken, it is proven. Show us where your heart lies. Kill this man." The hall erupted in cruel laughter and eager whispers. Nobles leaned forward, their jeweled masks glinting, hungry for blood. Addison froze. His mind spun. They wanted him to murder one of his own, to prove his loyalty to the throne, to prove that he was broken. The prisoner met his eyes. No words passed between them, but the message was clear. Do not give them what they want. Addison's hands clenched. He looked at the king, at the nobles, at the sneering faces waiting to see him fall. Then he looked at Elira. She sat rigid, her jaw tight, her violet eyes locked on him. She said nothing, but her gaze spoke louder than words. "Choose carefully." The guards shoved the prisoner forward, placing a blade in Addison's hand. For a long moment, the hall held its breath. Addison raised the blade. His heart pounded. Every soldier's instinct screamed against it. To kill his own was to betray everything he had ever fought for. But to refuse was to invite death, not only his own, but perhaps Elira's as well. Then, slowly, he lowered the blade. He dropped it onto the stone floor, the clang echoing through the hall. "I will not kill him," Addison said, his voice strong. "Not for you. Not for anyone." Gasps swept the hall. Nobles shouted in outrage. Some rose to their feet, pointing, demanding punishment. The king's face twisted with rage, his crown seeming to darken under the firelight. "You dare defy me?" Vorith thundered. Addison stood tall. "I am a soldier of earth. I do not kill my own. If you want blood, take mine." The hall exploded in chaos. Guards surged forward, blades drawn. But before they could strike, Elira rose. "Enough." Her voice cut through the uproar like a blade. She stepped between her father and Addison, her presence commanding. "He is mine, father. By the law of the Dominion, his life is bound to me. Harm him, and you dishonor the very traditions you claim to protect." Her words slammed into the hall like thunder. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of torches. The king's fists clenched on the arms of his throne. His fury was clear, but the law was unyielding. At last, he sank back into his seat, his voice low and venomous. "Very well, daughter. Keep your pet. But know this, the law may bind my hand, but it cannot bind my will. You will both pay for this defiance." Addison stood beside her, his chest heaving, his heart still pounding from the choice he had made. For the first time since his capture, he felt a strange pride, a sense that even in the heart of his enemy's empire, he had not bent. And when he glanced at Elira, he saw something in her eyes he had not seen before. Not just defiance, not just calculation, but respect. The feast continued, but the night had changed. Lines had been drawn, and the king's wrath was far from over. The feast ended in fire and fury. Though the king had let them walk away from his trap, Addison knew it was not mercy. It was patience. King Vorith was a predator, circling, waiting for the right moment to strike. That night, Elira led Addison through a hidden passage beneath her chambers. The stone corridor smelled of damp earth, torches flickering against carvings older than the palace itself. She carried a lantern, her hands steady though her eyes were hard. "Where are we going?" Addison asked, his voice low. "To those who still believe peace is worth dying for," she replied. They emerged into an underground hall, where figures waited in the shadows. Men and women in plain armor, their cloaks marked not with the Dominion's sigil, but with a broken crown. Rebels. A tall alien with scarred skin stepped forward, bowing his head slightly to Elira. "Princess, you honor us." Elira returned the gesture. "You are the ones who honor me, Varric. I told you when the time came, I would bring proof of my choice. This is Addison of Earth." The rebels murmured, some doubtful, others curious. Addison stood tall, though his heart pounded. He had no idea what kind of bargain she was making, but the scarred rebel's eyes softened as he looked at the human soldier. "So it is true," Varric said. "The princess has bound herself to a man of Earth." Elira's voice carried strength. "The king will invade your world. He will burn cities and enslave millions. But if we stand together, humans, rebels, all who are tired of endless war, we may yet change our fate." The rebels nodded, some clenching fists, others lowering their heads in thought. Addison felt their eyes on him, weighing his worth. For the first time, he realized Elira had staked her entire life, her reputation, and her plan on him standing beside her. Later, as they rested in a hidden chamber, Addison confronted her. "You brought me here like proof. A trophy to show them. Do you ever stop using me as a piece in your game?" Her gaze snapped to his, sharp and unflinching. "Do you think I wanted this? To tie my fate to a human soldier? I could have remained silent and watched you die. Instead, I risked everything. My father will never forgive me. The nobles want my head. And yet I chose you." Addison fell silent. The firelight danced across her face, showing not just anger, but exhaustion. She was carrying a burden far heavier than her crown. At last, he asked, "Why me?" Her eyes softened, though only slightly. "Because you would never bow. I saw it in your eyes on the battlefield. My people live under fear, but you humans, you resist, even when defeat is certain. That is what I need. That is what the galaxy needs." Addison leaned back, staring at the flames. For the first time, he understood. She was not chaining him. She was gambling on him. Their uneasy alliance solidified that night. But fate moved quickly. At dawn, alarms shook the palace above. The king had discovered the passage, or perhaps someone had betrayed them. Guards swarmed the halls, their armored boots shaking the ground. Varric and the rebels fought to hold them off, steel clashing against steel, blue fire flashing in the tunnels. Addison grabbed a fallen blade, his soldier's instincts snapping back into place. He fought side by side with the rebels, striking down armored guards, forcing their way toward the surface. But the escape was chaos. Smoke filled the tunnels, cries of the wounded echoing through the stone. Elira stayed close, her daggers flashing in the torchlight, her movements precise and deadly. She was no helpless royal. She fought like someone who had trained for war her entire life. Finally, they burst into the night air, the alien city sprawling beneath them, towers glowing like embers against the dark sky. Alarms blared, the king's banners unfurling across the palace walls. They had escaped the cage, but not the hunt. As they caught their breath in the shadows of a ruined outpost, Addison turned to Elira. Now what? Do we keep running until he hunts us down? Because that is all this will be. Running. Elira's face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. We cannot simply flee. If we vanish into the stars, my father will still invade Earth. He will still crush your people. Running will save us, but it will not save them. Addison looked out at the glowing towers, the sky thick with enemy ships. For a moment, the weight of it all crushed him. He wanted to go home, to see Earth again, to feel the soil of his own world beneath his boots. But he knew she was right. Running would not end the war. She stepped closer, her voice softer now. You have a choice, Addison. Go back to Earth. Live whatever life you can reclaim. Or stay with me. Stand against him, not as prisoner and princess, but as equals. Addison met her gaze. Her face was lit by the rising sun, her eyes fierce and unyielding. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He did not just respect her. He was beginning to care for her. His voice was quiet, but steady. I will stay. Elira's lips curved, just slightly, into the faintest trace of a smile. Then we fight together. The city stirred awake around them, soldiers hunting, banners waving. War was on the horizon. And for the first time, Addison no longer felt like prey in a foreign world. He felt like a soldier standing where he was meant to be, beside Elira, ready to change the fate of two worlds. The rebels' hideout pulsed with tense energy. Maps of the Dominion's territories were spread across stone tables, marked with red ink and symbols of resistance. Addison stood over them, arms crossed, listening as Varric and the others debated their next move. Attacking the palace head-on is suicide, one rebel growled. Then what? Let the king strangle us in the shadows? Another snapped. He controls the army, the nobles, the courts. Not all of them, Elira interrupted. The chamber stilled. Her voice rang clear, sharp as steel. The nobles despise my father's endless wars. They smile in his court, but curse him in private. He rules by fear, not loyalty. If we show them that fear can be broken, he will fall. Addison studied her, realizing just how dangerous her gamble was. She wasn't only fighting with blades. She was betting everything on words, symbols, and courage. And how do we do that? Varric asked. Elira's eyes swept across the rebels, then to Addison. We do it the same way my father sought to break Addison. A spectacle, a gathering of the court, where all eyes are upon us. He sought to humiliate humanity with a public execution. Instead, we turn his own stage against him. The rebels muttered, some uncertain, others nodding. Addison leaned forward, resting his palms on the table. You're saying we walk into his den? Surrounded by soldiers? Into the palace we just bled to escape from? Elira met his gaze, unwavering. Yes, but not as prey, as challengers. Together. The plan was madness, but the fire in her eyes pulled him in. Addison agreed. The following night, the great palace hall glittered with banners, torches, and the watchful eyes of the Dominion's court. Nobles in lavish robes filled the chamber, whispering behind jeweled masks. The king sat upon his throne, towering, armored in gold and obsidian. And through the massive doors, Addison and Elira entered. Gasps rippled across the hall. The human prisoner had returned, alive. Worse, at the princess's side. Voritha's booming voice shook the chamber. My daughter returns to me, dragging her pet once more. Have you come to beg forgiveness, Elira? Or to kneel before your king? Elira's reply rang through the hall like a blade leaving its sheath. I kneel to no tyrant. Not as a daughter, not as a princess, and not as your pawn. The court erupted in whispers, shock spreading like wildfire. Voritha's face darkened. Careful, child. But Elira pressed on, stepping forward, her voice stronger with every word. You promised them glory. You promised them wealth. Instead, you bleed them for your wars. You treat your own people as slaves, your nobles as pawns, and now you would drag Earth into the same misery. Gasps echoed. Some nobles lowered their gazes, but others lifted their heads, their expressions hardening with quiet agreement. The king sneered, but his eyes flickered with unease. And what, daughter, do you offer in place of my rule? This human? This soldier who should have died screaming at my feet? Addison stepped forward now, feeling hundreds of alien eyes on him. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of every battle he'd fought. You see a soldier, a prisoner, a piece of meat to throw to your court. But I am more than that. I am proof you can be resisted. You may break my body, but you will never own me. And that is why you fear me. The hall stirred again, whispers louder now, sharper. Some nobles stood taller, their eyes flicking between Addison and the king. Vorith rose from his throne, towering above them. His voice roared. You think you can sway my court with speeches? You think they will follow a human? You think they would ever betray their king? Elira's answer cut him cold. They already have. Doors slammed open. Rebels poured in from hidden passages, not with weapons drawn, but with banners unfurled, the broken crown raised high. More nobles stood from their seats, pulling away their jeweled masks. What had begun as whispers now thundered into open defiance. The king's gaze swept the hall, and for the first time, Addison saw it, the flicker of fear in the eyes of a man who ruled by it. Vorith raised his arm to summon his guards, but they hesitated. Their loyalty was not unshakable. Too many eyes were watching. Too many hearts had turned. Elira stepped to Addison's side. Father, your reign ends tonight. Not by the sword, but by the will of those who no longer believe in you. The hall erupted. Some guards lowered their weapons. Others joined the rebels. The tide had turned, not through bloodshed, but through courage. Vorith's voice shook the chamber one last time. You are fools, all of you. Without me, there will be chaos. Without me, there will be nothing. But no one listened. Addison reached for Elira's hand. For the first time since his capture, he felt not like a pawn in a foreign game, but like a partner standing exactly where he belonged. And as the nobles declared their defiance, as rebels raised their banners, as the king's power crumbled before their eyes, Addison and Elira stood together, not as prisoner and princess, not as human and alien, but as equals who had chosen each other. The throne room still echoed with the cries of rebellion, but the battle had already been won, not through blades, but through courage. Vorith stood trembling, his golden armor gleaming under the torchlight, but now it looked less like the regalia of a king and more like the husk of a toppled tyrant. He spat at the crowd, roaring, You think this changes anything? A kingdom cannot be ruled by children and traitors. But the court no longer feared him. One by one, the nobles turned their backs. Guards laid down their weapons. The once mighty king's voice cracked under the weight of silence, a silence louder than war drums. Addison watched it happen with a soldier's clarity. It wasn't swords or blasters that ended Vorith, it was belief. The belief that people could rise above fear. And at the center of it all stood Elira, no longer just the princess who had defied her father, but the woman who had risked everything for a future no one else dared imagine. Vorith was dragged from the throne room, his reign shattered. He raged until the doors slammed shut, his voice fading into nothing. When the dust settled, Addison and Elira remained side by side before the court. Varric and the rebels knelt first. Then, shockingly, so did several nobles. The gesture rippled outward until the hall was filled with bowed heads. Elira's voice rose above them, steady and regal. I am not here to be your queen, nor your tyrant. I am here to be your partner in peace. No more endless wars. No more blood spilled for greed. From this day forward, our people will rebuild together. A cheer rose from the hall, cautious at first, then roaring like a storm. Addison felt the sound wash over him, heavy and surreal. He had expected to die in this palace, just another nameless casualty in a war humanity never asked for. Instead, he had become part of something greater, a new beginning. Later, as the fires burned low and the court scattered into planning the future, Addison found himself with Elira on the palace balcony. The night sky stretched vast and star-filled above them. He exhaled, almost laughing. You know, when you claimed me in that court, I hated you. I thought I was just another piece in some twisted alien game. Elira glanced at him, her eyes soft under the starlight. You were right to hate me. It was selfish at first. I only wanted to buy time for Earth, to bind you so my father couldn't touch your people. I never imagined it would bring me here. Addison tilted his head, studying her. And where's here exactly? Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Standing beside someone I no longer see as a pawn, but as a partner, as more. For a long moment, silence lingered between them, filled only by the cool night air and the hum of distant voices. Then Addison reached out and took her hand. "I thought I'd spend the rest of my life fighting battles I couldn't win," he murmured. "But maybe the real battle was learning to trust you. And the truth is, I don't want to walk away now. Not from you." Her fingers tightened around his. No royal decree, no ceremony, no grand spectacle could have bound them as deeply as that simple choice. The following day, a new symbol was unveiled across the Dominion's banners, a human hand clasping an alien's, framed by a broken crown. It was more than a crest, it was a promise. Whispers spread across both worlds. The human soldier who had once been dragged in chains now stood as a leader beside the alien princess who had defied her bloodline. What had begun as a trap, a forced bond in a cruel court, had transformed into something neither of them had foreseen. A partnership forged in fire, sharpened by trust, and sealed with love. As Addison and Elira stood once more before their people, their hands entwined, he realized that their story was no longer about survival or rebellion, or even war. It was about choosing each other. And from that choice, peace had a chance to grow. The marriage trap had become their greatest strength. Not a lie, not a ruse, but the beginning of a new future, one where human and alien stood together, not as enemies, not as captor and captive, but as equals, partners,